Oh, what? That's sick. This is cool. Get him. Whoa! There's a shark in there. Oh my god, that's a rocket brush. Piss off. Whoa. There we go. Got that tank. Got that guy. Headshot, baby. Oh no! The artillery strikes me. Dirtbags. Oh wow, here comes the storm, guys. Hey guys, Level Cap here. Today I'm going to give you my first impressions on the Pacific content for Battlefield 5. This just came out today. There's 2 new maps, Iwo Jima and Pacific Storm, along with 4 new weapons, 1 for each class, and a plethora of new vehicles and even some cool new mounted weapons. Without question, this is the most anticipated and most important content update for Battlefield 5 since launch. It's the first time that we're getting new factions in the game, the Americans and Japanese. Now, of course, both factions can use all the previous weapons that have been available in the game, so you'll be using whatever guns that you would prefer, but you do have a few new American and Japanese weapons to pick from, and also the American faction now uses all the American cosmetics that have been previously put in the game, and I believe they've all been removed from the British faction. So now the British look like British, the Americans should look like Americans, well, at least within the game's cosmetic style. Now, as of for the first day of launch, Breakthrough really seems to be where it's at. There's tons and tons and tons of Breakthrough servers up and running on these new maps, and it does seem to be the best way to experience at least Iwo Jima. This, for all intensive purposes, is that classic, epic, iconic Battlefield experience where the Americans are pushing in with their landing craft on the beach, the Japanese are set up to defend with machine gun bunkers, there's tanks, there's artillery cannons set up, and all hell just breaks loose on the beach. There's planes flying overhead, and you see the giant mountain on Iwo Jima in the background, and knowing that you can actually progress and start fighting on that mountain as you progress and start taking objectives is awesome. And it is really cool getting up on top of that mountain and having that fight up there. It's going to be a hell of a fight, and it's not necessarily easy to push through, but it is fun. There's tons of tickets, and it really does feel like a real slugfest all the way through. This map in Breakthrough is a great experience. This is what I've been wanting from not just Battlefield 5, but just any Battlefield game in general. But this is really the first time in Battlefield 5 that I felt like we're getting that classic experience back. Airplanes take off from the aircraft carrier once again. This is something that I didn't realize that I was missing until I did it again. I'm like, oh my god, I'm taking my plane off of an aircraft carrier. This feels like classic Battlefield. You can get blown up in your landing craft before you even get to the beach. There's these really epic Japanese artillery cannons that just blow the heck out of everything in front of them. And the American Calliope tank, I haven't used the Japanese equivalent yet, but the rocket barrage on top is freaking awesome. It looks really cool. It's actually effective. It's not just gimmicky. And when you see these tanks move across the battlefield shooting off a rocket barrage and giant explosions in the distance, you're just sort of taken aback again by the awe-inspiring experience that Battlefield has been known for. If the game had launched with this map or a few maps of this caliber, I think the general consensus or impressions of the game would have been significantly different. Iwo Jima also, because of having black sand beaches and honestly not that dense of vegetation, doesn't have big visibility problems, so I'm not having issues identifying my enemies. Granted, the Japanese soldiers right now don't have a lot of cosmetic options to pick from, so they're generally tan and stand out from the environment. The US are generally green, which makes them stand out on the Black Sands beach, but they do blend in a little bit more once they get into the environment. It'll be interesting to see if any of this changes as more cosmetics are added for both factions. Now, the other map that launched today, Pacific Storm, is a bit of a different experience. It's got much denser vegetation, so visibility inherently is going to be much more difficult, on top of which a Pacific Storm will roll in while you're playing through the map, and rain and lots of sound effects and stuff will be going on, and it's going to make enemy acquisition a bit more difficult. Not impossible, but significantly more difficult. And so that map is just by nature far more chaotic than Iwo Jima. I had fun playing it for sure. I got on some crappy teams that just felt like they weren't being able to push up. There's plenty of tanks in that map as well, and you kind of have to like take these bridges and push across them and establish yourself. We ended up just getting into a lot of situations where it's like, okay, we have A point, now we got to capture B point. We captured B point, but we lost A point. Now we got to go back to A point. Oh, we lost B point. And that just kept happening over and over and over and over and over again. And that can inherently just be a problem with breakthrough. One of the reasons why I think some people enjoy Rush better, because you have the MCOMs, and once you detonate an MCOM, you don't have to worry about it anymore. But the map itself was just a bit more open and a bit more chaotic. Like you could get hit from many, 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 many different angles. And it was almost comical at times assaulting bases and just realizing that I'm just getting shot from like the bushes in a 360-degree circle around me. Like it's almost impossible to truly anticipate where your enemies are. I haven't played either of the maps on Conquest yet, so I can't really tell you how well they play out on Conquest, if they're good experiences or not. Again, most of the servers were just queued up on Breakthrough here, and I think that's really the mode that DICE is trying to showcase initially, because I think it probably is the best mode for both of these maps. Pacific Storm is fun. It's cool. It's interesting. It's not on the same level as Iwo Jima. I give Pacific Storm like a 7 out of 10 for the most part. There are some neat little visual eye candy, especially when you're swimming around. I saw a shark, trying to swim through the channel there. I don't know if the sharks will attack you, but it did freak me out significantly. Now, certainly the nostalgia factor plays a really big role here, but seeing Sherman tanks roll across the battlefield once again is just such a welcome feeling. It feels like I'm home, if you will, playing Battlefield 5 with Sherman tanks. The Calliope is awesome, but the standard Sherman tanks are also really awesome. They're fun to play. The turrets seem a little bit snappier than before, which is part of the 5.0 patch that came out with Battlefield 5, which, by the way, is an excellent patch. I did a video on the patch notes, but I haven't exactly reviewed the patch. Many things got a lot better, and one of the things that I think has been downplayed quite a bit in the patch notes is the sound updates. Basically, the sound engine in Battlefield 5 has been reworked from the ground up. Things are much clearer now, less chaotic, less muddied. Sounds seem like they're triggering at the proper moments and stuff like that. There's been a lot of improvements with this latest update. Anti-air cannons are now effective against airplanes for a change. The Fliegerfaust is just downright OP against airplanes. I don't know if DICE plans on having any sort of balance there, but at the moment, people seem to be totally fine with absolutely owning air power so that they're not just getting torn up by them. It's definitely not as fun to be a pilot right now. I was looking forward to doing some cool strafing runs in the F4U or a Zero, and they don't last long. You get taken out by a Fliegerfaust pretty darn quick. So that seems to be the state of things as a pilot for the most part. But for the visual spectacle, it is very cool. Also, if you're on the ground, you're going to be seeing airplanes dropping all over the place and crashing in the ocean and crashing in the land. It looks very cool cinematically. Just, again, balance. I don't think DICE is quite there yet. Now, yesterday I reviewed the 4 new weapons, their strengths, weaknesses. For the most part, they're all fun additions to the game. I have really grown to enjoy the new SMG, the Japanese SMG. It's just a fun little gun to run around with. It's crazy accurate, so if you're good at shooting for the head, you can extend your range a bit by just getting headshots with it. And the Arisaka is a fun sniper rifle. I don't know if any of the other weapons are really going to become ones that I primarily use, but it's nice having them there just because they are important weapons from an aesthetic standpoint to really solidify these factions. We're still watching the US run around with STGs and the Japanese run around with like MG42s and whatever, and it doesn't exactly feel super authentic if you start paying attention to the weapons that soldiers are using, but the visuals of the map, the vehicles being used, the cosmetics so far look pretty authentic for both factions, and so it does still attain a realistic World War II feeling. And without question, doing Iwo Jima has been so important to this update here because Iwo Jima is one of the more famous battles of the war, and DICE previously just hadn't done any big battles. They hadn't done any of the World War II greatest hits playlist, if you will. And that's what all the previous Battlefield games had done. Battlefield 1942 was nothing but famous, iconic battles. And then this game comes in with the lesser known battles. And so Iwo Jima has been a very important part of saying, hey, look, here's this big famous battle that you all know about. Here's our portrayal of it. It's pretty darn cool, very, very accurate, very authentic looking. And I appreciate that, and I think a lot of other players are also going to appreciate that. Hopefully there's a lot more of that in store for us, especially now that it looks like the next Battlefield game's coming in 2021. That indicates that there's going to be a lot more Battlefield 5 support and content in the future. And if that support and content can come in the way of massive iconic battles, then I think there's a very, very good future for this game. In terms of quantity of content, it's certainly less than a typical Battlefield DLC from previous games. Most previous DLCs would launch with 4 maps. Some of them often would come with like 10 weapons, a bunch of cool gadgets and stuff like that. This is 2 maps, one more in December, 4 guns initially with another 5th in the Tides of War. You can unlock the, I think, Jungle Carbine right now if you play enough. And then there'll be more weapons coming out each week and stuff like that. So it's still a little bit less content than what you would expect from a typical DLC for, like, say, Battlefield 4 or something like that. And you could argue that Iwo Jima is a top tier, top notch, extremely high fidelity map, probably better than most maps you would have gotten from other previous games. And I would tend to agree with that, except then you look at Pacific Storm, which is supposed to be sort of taking after Parasail Storm from BF4, and well, Parasail Storm's a much higher fidelity, more interesting map with like crazy Levolution events that would trigger and stuff like that, or Pacific Storm is relatively simple by comparison. So, you know, you can certainly make arguments here and there. Overall, this is a good update for the game. I can definitely nitpick it if I need to, but I think if DICE continues on this trend, then Battlefield 5 is going to turn into a game with a lot of good, fun content in it, and the latest patch that they added has been generally just a win all around. DICE really needed this content to be good, and it is good. Now, if they can continue to keep that hype train rolling, that momentum train rolling, if by the time Wake Island launches and they've announced or hinted at something else really cool in the pipeline, that'll keep players excited and motivated for the future of this game. If we can add even more Pacific content beyond Wake Island in the future and then start migrating the American faction over to the European theater of war, mixing them in some Battle of Bulge, D-Day operation type stuff, things could get very exciting very quickly. And then save the Russian announcement for like next year sometime. Like, I can imagine the content rollout for this game getting extremely exciting and extremely robust with so many more iconic battles available to DICE now that these new factions are in the game. So hopefully the future is bright for this game. This DLC is awesome. If you haven't played Battlefield 5 in a while, download the massive patches that have come out, try it out. Not only is the latest patch extremely good for the game, but the latest content is extremely cool as well. Thanks for watching, guys. Let me know what you think about this DLC in the comments down below, and I'll see you next time. This is Level Cap signing off.